Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, folks. Welcome back. We have for you another supplement review episode. What's on tap for today? Well, that's a review of Bum Energy root beer flavor. Really looking forward to trying this. I'm a huge root beer flavored fan. Taking a look at the can, I love the design. It's a very simple, kind of retro design here. There's even a little quote or a motivational / inspirational statement on the back. Wake up early and chase greatness. Dream so big it scares you. The journey is greater than the reward. Expect less and hope more, you'll be happier. Take risks, the stories will be worth it. Love your mom so much you tattoo it on your arm. Interesting. Life can be tough, take it one day at a time. That's all we can live, folks, is one day at a time. Don't be a bum. Drink Bum Energy. So after today, I guess I won't be a bum. No, maybe. And you won't be a bum either, because we're going to try it out here together. So if you watched the previous supplement review on Ghost Energy, you know how I like to do it. So I go kind of in intricate detail, in my opinion, the ingredients in the supplement facts panel, and then we save the taste test for the last, which I'm really looking forward to because I am thirsty as heck. So this is very simple. There's only 2 active ingredients in this product. I don't see any vitamins in it. So I'll pop up the supplement facts panel here so you can take a look. First ingredient, 250 milligrams of Cognizin citicoline. So Cognizin is a trademarked brand. I believe the manufacturer is Kiowa Hako, I think is the name of the manufacturer of it. So they own the trademark. And citicoline is another word for CDP choline, which is cytidine. Pop up the molecule here. Cytidine, diphosphose, or 2 phosphate groups, choline. So that's what it is. It is a supplemental form of choline. I believe the amount of choline in CDP choline is 18% by weight. So if we have 250 milligrams of citicoline, that gives us 40 to 50 milligrams of choline. So an added benefit, in my opinion, of CDP choline, or in this case, citicoline, is that our body makes it. So I'll pop up a picture of it here. This is the Kennedy pathway. It's the pathway that our cells use to take choline that either we ingest through food or through supplementation, and it gets converted into phosphatidylcholine, which is a phospholipid that is used to help make the membranes of cells. For very, very important. CDP choline is an intermediate product of that pathway. So our body already makes it. We're just supplementing with more of it. So very, very cool. So again, it's a supplemental form of choline. Now, I see 3 primary benefits of choline. The first one we already just discussed. It is used to make phosphatidylcholine. All right, skip to the next one. The next one is that it can be heart healthy or have maybe some heart health benefits to it. So in the mitochondria, choline is metabolized into betaine, aka trimethylglycine. I'll put a picture of the molecule up here. So in terms of heart health, what trimethylglycine can do is help keep homocysteine levels under control via what's called BHMT, betaine homocysteine methyltransferase. That's the enzyme. So what's homocysteine? Well, homocysteine is a natural byproduct of methionine metabolism. Methionine being an amino acid, it gets ultimately converted into homocysteine, and then homocysteine can get converted back into methionine via its methyl groups. All right, it gets methylated. That's the verb that is used. So for genetic variants, genetic reasons, whatever, from your mom and dad, thank your mom and dad for that. Some people have high levels of homocysteine. Their body can't convert that homocysteine back into methionine. They can't handle it properly. So I believe the medical term is hyperhomocystinemia. And that is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So through betaine homocysteine methyltransferase, the use of betaine, which has 3 methyl groups because it's trimethylglycine, then it can actually methylate, giving one of those methyl groups to homocysteine to convert it back into methionine, and then you have dimethylglycine. So it's just another way to take care of homocysteine, to keep those under control. So that can confer some heart health benefits. So very good. The third benefit that I see of choline is the production of acetylcholine. Wow! So in cholinergic neurons, and I'll pop a picture up here, in what's called the nucleus basalis, that's an area in the brain where there's a dense bundles of cholinergic neurons. That's where choline is used to actually make acetylcholine, which is a neuromodulator / neurotransmitter. It is used a lot like in pre-workout supplements, including my pre-workout, SMB pre-workout, which, hey, let me know if you want a free bottle of it. Hit me up. I'll send one to you if I have any available at the time you see this. But yeah, it is used for increasing like attention, focus. The reason for that is because in that nucleus basalis, where those cholinergic neurons are, the neurons innervate. That means the neurons go from there and they kind of spread out to other areas of the brain. And they go to the prefrontal cortex, which is where like executive decision making is involved, like decision making, attention, focus, etc. And the idea is we're supplying the raw material, the substrate, be it choline from acetylcholine, in order to then make the acetylcholine, and then that acetylcholine can then be used when we need it to help increase focus, attention, etc. in those areas of the brain where that is their primary function. All right. And acetylcholine is also necessary for throughout the body. It is used for voluntary and involuntary processes. I'll give you an example. Voluntary would be muscle contraction. Acetylcholine is necessary in order to start the process, which ultimately ends with contracting muscles. All right. I'm not going to go into that in this episode. But involuntary would be the pupil of our eye. So, I'm somewhat dimly lit room, whatever. If I go outside, which it's no clouds outside, it's a bright sunny day, my pupil is going to contract. It's going to get smaller to let less light in. Well, acetylcholine is used to help start the process to contract those muscles. That's involuntary. I don't have to think about it. So there's benefits in the brain as well as it's used throughout the body as well. All right. So that is cognizin acetylcholine. All right. The next ingredient is natural caffeine at 112 milligrams per can. And this is from coffee. Let me see. It just says coffee. Let me look at the ingredients here. Coffee bean. Okay. So it's natural caffeine from coffee bean, just like the previous supplement, which was Ghost Energy. 112 milligrams. That's actually a nice dose. I like that. I have tried energy drinks that have like a boatload of caffeine in it, and I'm not a huge fan of like those Stem Bomb energy drinks that have a bunch of caffeine. There's a time and place for it, sure, but this is really more geared towards like a daily consumption of the drink at 112 milligrams. It's like a cup of coffee. So that's a good dose. So mechanism of action. So the caffeine's primary mechanism of action is it's an adenosine receptor antagonist. So adenosine from ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and we all hear from grade school biology that our body, all the cells in our body use ATP for energy. Well, the neurons, the glial cells, which an example of a glial cell is an astrocyte, they're no different. They're using ATP all the time. There are enzymes called ectonucleotidases. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And what they do is they will cleave off those phosphate groups off of ATP. So ATP will get converted into ADP, as we talked about earlier, then AMP, then AMP to adenosine. And the only one, it's basically a class of enzymes, so there's different enzymes, but the only one I remember for whatever reason is adenosine deaminase, and that converts adenosine into inosine, all right? And what happens is that since it's being used all the time, this adenosine's building up in our brain. All right. And in fact, I'll pop a picture up here of what's called the tripartite synapse. So you have your presynaptic neuron. I'll highlight that. Your postsynaptic neuron. And then you also have astrocytes, which is a glial cell is what it's called. So, you wake up, you go throughout the day, you go to work, take care of your kids, run errands, whatever, record a podcast, another excellent podcast. And the adenosine's building up because ATP is constantly being broken down. All right. Adenosine builds up. Well, there are receptors on the neurons for adenosine. All right. And the adenosine attaches to the neurons. And then what it does is it decreases the neuron activity. All right. And so ultimately it ends up near the end of the day, if you've had a good night's sleep and you're not loaded up with caffeine. Well, not this, but this is the only thing I have available. But you're not taking a lot of caffeine to negatively affect that process. Well, then later on in the day, you get tired and want to go to sleep because adenosine is attaching to more and more neurons and it slows down that activity. Now, to break down, how does it slow down that activity? Well, there's a lot of different ways, but we're just going to talk about one here. All right. First, we're going to start off with the different adenosine receptors. There are 4 that I remember. It could be more, but there are 4 that I know of, and that is A1, A2A, A2B, and A3. Now, in the brain, there's primarily A1 and A2A, and those are the ones that caffeine antagonizes in order to produce the results that we like, the wakefulness, the euphoria, etc. Right. So we're going to limit the discussion because this could take forever if we go way too deep in detail. As you can see, if you watch the previous Ghost Energy review, I'm kind of going a little bit more deeper into what caffeine does than I did in that previous one. So each subsequent episode, I'm going to be going a little bit deeper, baby steps into this stuff, folks. But what we're going to talk about here is the A1 receptor, all right? And the A1 receptor is usually affiliated with what's called direct pathway neurons. That's regarding the direct pathway, the basal ganglia. Right? The direct pathway is essentially the neuronal pathway or the neural pathway to initiate voluntary movement. So what I'm doing now, voluntary movement. All right. There's also the indirect pathway, which is normally associated with the A2A receptor, and then that inhibits voluntary movement. So there's a balance. There's got to be a balance in between the two. Movement, non-movement, movement, non-movement, all right? So we're going to limit even further and talk about the A1 receptor on the presynaptic neuron, right? So we're going to go into kind of neuronal transmission 101, or maybe not even 101, because I'm nowhere near being a neurologist, man. I just know basic level, negative 101 class level knowledge in this stuff. Like you have, biology 101 in college. I'm like negative 101. All right. I'm even below the lowest. But essentially I'll pop a picture of a neuron up here. You have your dendrites, which are like the little spiny projections from the soma. And the soma is where like the nucleus of the neuron is. So like your mitochondria, etc. It's in there. All right. And then you have the axon. That's that long connection there. That's what I talked about before with the nucleus basalis, where the cholinergic neurons, those axons spread way up into other parts of the brain. All right. Well, right where the soma ends and the axon begins, I believe that's the axon hillock. That's what it's called. And at the end of the axon, you have more spiny projections, and that's the axon terminals. And those axon terminals provide a pathway for signals to go to dendrites of another neuron. And then right there where those two, they don't meet, but where those two, almost like an air kiss between the two, that's where the synaptic cleft is, and that's where your neurotransmitters are necessary. Your GABA for inhibitory, your glutamate for excitatory. Now, what we talked about earlier in a previous episode, on that axon terminal, you have the little gaps in the myelin sheath, which is necessary. That's where vitamin B12 has a benefit. That's where cholesterol, so our body makes cholesterol. We also consume cholesterol, but the body makes cholesterol. That's why one of the reasons why cholesterol is important, because it makes that myelin sheath there. but there's gaps in that axon terminal, or pardon me, the axon there, there's gaps. Those are called the nodes of Ranvier. I always like saying it that way. But what happens is you have an action potential. I'm sure you may have heard of that before. That's essentially what I refer to as the signal, all right? And what that essentially is ions, right? Sodium ions. So sodium is a positively charged ion. It is a cation, right? So normally, what's called the resting membrane potential, so the neuron's just kind of chilling out. It's not really doing much. Inside the neuron, it's negatively charged. Right? It's around negative 70 millivolts. But outside the neuron, it's positively charged. Why is that? Well, the sodium's hanging out there, so it's positively charged. Inside, you'll have like chloride ions, all right? So those are negatively charged. So, and you want to have that difference in between the two because that's where the action potential comes in. What happens is, the neurotransmitters attached to the dendrites there, the postsynaptic neurons, and that allows a flood of sodium ions to come in. Also, calcium can come in as well. Sodium ions to come in. What happens when you're putting in positively charged cations into a negatively charged space? What happens to the charge? It goes up. And so it becomes positive. And that process from becoming negatively charged inside, and then all of a sudden ions come in and it flips to positive, it's called depolarization. And so these ions are come flooding in. They go down the axon, and then the nodes of Ranvier help to kind of revitalize the charge. They revitalize with more sodium ions coming in, and then you get to the axon terminal. All right. Well, now we're going to focus here on the pre and postsynaptic neuron, the axon terminal. We're going to zoom into there. Well, there are voltage-gated calcium channels that are on that axon terminal. And what they're doing is they're checking the voltage. Okay, what is it? Oh, it's still negative 70 millivolts. Okay, it's still negative. But as soon as those ions come flooding in, it gets depolarized. And so those voltage-gated calcium channels say, oh, it's positive, open. And they open. And what do they let in? Well, it's in the name, calcium. Calcium ions, which are positively charged, come into the presynaptic neuron there. And what do? They help to release the neurotransmitters. Now, since this is a direct pathway neuron, more than likely the neurotransmitters there in the presynaptic neuron being held in vesicles, remember they get stored in vesicles, is glutamate. That's the primary excitatory neurotransmitter. So it increases neuron activity. All right. They're sitting there. When the calcium comes in, that starts the process then that the synaptic vesicles then will fuse to the membrane of the presynaptic neuron. And then when they fuse to it, you get a process called exocytosis, where the glutamate in this case gets released into the synaptic clefts. So without calcium, those synaptic vesicles can't fuse to the membrane of the presynaptic neuron and release that glutamate. So all the more important, this mom said, to drink your milk. All right, get that calcium. Not a milk commercial. No, not a milk commercial. Well, adenosine, the A1 receptor, it can exist on the presynaptic neuron. It's also on the postsynaptic as well. But we're just talking about the presynaptic here. Well, when adenosine attaches to that presynaptic A1 receptor, it inhibits the calcium channels from doing their job. So that way, when you have an action potential that comes down, calcium doesn't come in, glutamate's not released. So in that way, it helps to start calming down the neurons. And then eventually, you eventually get tired. You want to go sleep. All right? So now we talk about, okay, where's caffeine come into play? Well, caffeine, I'll put a picture of it here. It's not the same, but the structure of the molecule is similar to adenosine. So what caffeine can do with the A1 receptor is it just squats. It just goes right in there and sits. All right? And when adenosine tries to attach to that receptor, oh, I can't attach. Caffeine's here. It antagonizes it. It prevents adenosine from attaching to the A1 receptor. Well, since caffeine is similar, it can fit in that receptor. But since it's not adenosine, it doesn't activate the receptor. And the A1 receptor is also what's called the GPCR, a G protein couple receptor. We talked about that in previous podcasts. I believe it's a GI inhibitory. All right. Well, since caffeine attaches, but it doesn't activate it, it doesn't inhibit those calcium channels. So then calcium can still flood in when the action potential, the ions, the sodium ions come in and changes the membrane potential. Calcium can still come in, and then glutamate can still be released. So in that way, it continues neuron activity. Caffeine does. And that's one way that it kind of promotes wakefulness. Caffeine really does, in this pathway, it really doesn't give you energy. All right. It's just, that's a fun thing to say. I even said it when I was advertising my pre-workout. Oh, it gives you energy, increased energy. It doesn't give you energy. It just delays fatigue and promotes wakefulness. But there's a price, and that's where you get the crash afterwards. All right. But now there's supplements and the amount of caffeine to help try to prevent that crash, or at least limit it. But yeah, the crash can be bad. So that's it. In terms of the supplement ingredients, that's all I wanted to go over today. So now we're going to get to the taste test, and I'm waiting for it because I am super thirsty. So let's give it a shot here. All right. I have already, like the previous review, if you saw that, I've already cleaned it off with alcohol and cotton ball, washed it off and everything. I got my straw right over here, but first we need to crack it open and get that on the microphone. So let me hold this here. All right. Let's see if this works. Yeah, I just spilled some on the table here. Got to clean that off. All right, let's take a sniff. Now, my sense of smell is not great, which, by the way, is related to acetylcholine, but let's see. Now, yeah, it actually smells like root beer. Okay, thumbs up for the root beer smell. Let's give it a taste. Not bad. It actually does taste like root beer. No, it's it's lighter in the root beer taste than I expected. But not like a Barq's root beer, which is my favorite. But yeah, I could definitely taste the root beer. That is really, really good. It's not. To me, it's not too powerful on the carbonation, so I like that. It's good. Yeah, I like it. My son, little Sam, whenever he likes something that he eats or drinks, he always gives it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So I guess out of 10, I'll give this and I'm just making it up. I'll give it an 8 Sam thumbs up on this. If I had 8 thumbs, I would have them all up. So definitely recommend. Very good. All right. That's it, folks. Please like, subscribe, share, whatever that is. Comment if you have any questions. I'll get back to you with an answer as soon as I possibly can. And if you have any supplements you'd like for me to review, please let me know. Definitely interested in getting your thoughts on which ones to review, and I will do my best to get it out ASAP. So with that, until next time, much love to you all. Take care. Bye-bye.